They stop replying. The texts slow down. Their energy pulls back. You mention something important, and they pretend they didn't hear it. You feel that shift, subtle but unmistakable. You're no longer being chosen. You're being evaluated. Or worse, you're being replaced. And most people, they fall into the same trap. They chase. They start over explaining, trying to clarify, trying to fix something that isn't even broken. It's just changed. They search for closure like it's a moral necessity, not realizing that in that very act, they're handing over the last bit of power they still had. But Machiavelli wouldn't chase. He wouldn't explain. He wouldn't even blink. Why? Because he understood something most people never do. You are either feared or you are forgotten. If someone's ignoring you, it's not an oversight. It's a signal, a strategic one. Either they fear losing you less than they fear losing control, or they've stopped seeing you as a threat entirely. And once they no longer view you as dangerous, your relevance fades. But there's a way to make them crave your presence again. Not through begging, kindness, or even punishment. No. You do it through psychological gravity, through a silence that disrupts their emotional balance, through a presence so potent, even your absence makes the room colder. When Machiavelli navigated the world of power, he never tried to win people back. He made them regret ever turning away. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Being ignored isn't silence. It's a strategy. It's not passive. It's an aggressive form of control. What social psychologists would call a status maneuver. They are asserting dominance by refusing to engage, communicating that your presence no longer holds leverage. And if you react emotionally, if you double text, question, or plead, you've already lost. This is the first rule of psychological warfare. The one who reacts first loses leverage. They want you to panic, to spiral. They want you wondering, what happened? Because the moment you start seeking clarity, they become the gravitational center, and you begin to orbit. But a true Machiavellian doesn't orbit. They become the black hole, an invisible force so powerful that even light bends around them. You don't chase the sun. You become the absence that distorts everything. You flip the script. You don't react with emotion. You respond with elevation. There is nothing more unsettling to someone trying to provoke a response than complete, calm indifference. Worse than indifference, actually, evolution. You make them feel that your life has grown quieter, more focused, more powerful without them in it. This is the power move. Withdraw in silence. Evolve in darkness. No confrontation. No can we talk? No parting speech. Just space. Heavy, cold, deliberate. Let them sit in uncertainty, wondering. Did you notice? Do you care? Have they already replaced me? Because here's a brutal truth from neuroscience. The human brain hates open loops. When a relationship doesn't resolve, when there's no closure, the brain obsesses. That's how cravings form. That's how anxiety spirals. You don't need to say a word. Your silence becomes a blade, and it cuts into every assumption they made about your availability. But here's where most people fail. They try to use silence like a tool, but they don't change their posture. They stop texting, but still watch their stories. They walk away, but keep glancing back. They say they're done, but their energy still screams, "Please notice me." That's not silence. That's static. Real silence, the kind that Machiavelli would weaponize, is paired with a kind of sacred detachment. You don't just withdraw your words, you withdraw your emotional availability. No reactions, no digital footprints, no signs of life that could be interpreted as longing. This is how you retrain their nervous system, because eventually the silence starts to hurt. And when they break, they won't come back calmly. They'll come back confused, irritated, curious, trying to mask their desperation as casual interest. And when they do, you don't reward them with warmth. You greet them with gravity. Here's why most people lose control in relationships, whether romantic, social, or professional. They make themselves too accessible, too easy to reach, too consistent, too there. But a Machiavellian doesn't do that. They dose their presence like a drug. Too little, and people crave it. Too much, and people build tolerance. You want to make someone desperate for your attention? Give them a small taste, then starve them completely. Disengage without explanation. Disappear into your own evolution. Let your glow up become the narrative. And when you do speak again, if you speak, it must be with precision. No emotional flooding. No, I've been thinking about you. Your words become rare and sharp, because what they're really chasing is not you. It's the version of themselves that felt powerful when they had your attention. Now that version is gone, replaced by a void, a discomfort. And that contrast? That's your leverage. Eventually, there will be a moment, there always is, when the person who pulled away starts feeling unsettled. They don't miss you. They miss their power over you. They send a casual message, a like, a hope you're doing well. This is not a reunion. This is a probe. Don't bite. A Machiavellian doesn't respond to probes. They wait. If that person wants back in, they'll escalate. If they don't, then they were never returning. They just wanted to make sure you were still orbiting. Because this game was never about affection. It's always been about gravitational pull. You become so emotionally centered that others feel disoriented in your absence. You don't need to chase. You just need to become the kind of force that destabilizes people when you're no longer there. That's how the one who ignored you comes back, desperate. And when they do, you decide whether they've earned the privilege of your presence ever again. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel passive. It feels sacred. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of someone who's become untouchable. That's where most people misread power. They think it's about being louder, bigger, more reactive. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew the most terrifying form of power isn't noise, it's presence withheld. He once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does at last." So when someone ignores you, the fool eventually breaks. They text. They apologize. They beg. But the wise, they move immediately, not toward reconciliation, toward repositioning. They don't chase. They don't explain. They don't mirror the indifference. They escalate, but not in emotion, in status, in visibility. They don't become colder just to match someone's energy. They become untouchable in a way that feels permanent. Because here's the secret. The real power isn't in getting someone to notice you again. It's in becoming the version of yourself who no longer needs to be noticed. You don't orbit their world. You build your own gravitational field and let others feel the pull. Now let's talk tactics. What do you actually do when someone ignores you? First, disappear completely. No texts, no reactions, no passive signals, no breadcrumb trails for them to follow. You remove your presence like it was never there. Not to punish, but to recenter. If you need to unfollow, do it. If you need to mute, do it. But don't do it for drama. Do it for focus. You become strategically invisible. This activates one of the deepest fears in the human psyche. Am I being forgotten? Not because you said something dramatic, but because you vanished like mist. And here's the thing. They won't feel it immediately. Not today. Maybe not even tomorrow. But one day, when the room feels colder, when the attention they used to get feels cheaper, when they scroll and see your name missing, that's when your silence begins to hit. And it won't feel like absence. It'll feel like judgment. Second, become publicly untouchable. If the first phase is silence, the second is signal. But not to them, to the world. This is where you step into motion. You become visibly productive. You glow differently. Photos, wins, moments of movement. Not in desperation, but in quiet demonstration of value. They must see that you're expanding without them. They must realize they've been left behind. This isn't about vanity, it's contrast. The human brain compares who you were versus who you are now, who you were versus who you are now. And when that distance grows too wide, insecurity takes root. They start wondering, did I underestimate them? Are they happier now? Did I ever matter? Let that tension sit. Let it gnaw at them. Because here's the psychological law. The one who controls the contrast controls the frame. And when you control the frame, you don't have to argue your value. They feel it. You don't have to tell them what they lost. They see it. And now we arrive at the third phase, controlled contact, only if desired. This is the part where most people blow it. They hold out, they stay silent, and then they break. Not because it's time, but because they're lonely. That's not strategy, that's collapse. But you wait. And when you do respond, it happens under three very clear conditions. 1. You didn't initiate. They reached out, you didn't chase. 2. You respond slowly, not passive-aggressively, calmly, with purpose. You've got a life. You're not checking your phone every 5 minutes. 3. You've already replaced them, energetically. There's no gap to fill, no longing. Your emotional state is full. You're colder than before. Not cruel, just still, measured. Now they feel something they didn't expect. Cost. They're paying for the access they once took for granted. And this shift? It's electric. Because they're not just noticing your absence anymore. They're feeling the weight of regaining your presence. Let them feel it. Let them earn it. And if they don't, you win anyway. Because you've trained yourself to never chase attention again. Now let's add one final piece. The one that truly makes this Machiavellian. Unpredictability. Predictable people are easy to control. Unpredictable ones, they create obsession. If someone always knows how you'll respond, they never feel unsettled. So, change the pattern. One day, you're visible. The next, you're gone. One reply is lighthearted. The next is precise and distant. They try to find patterns. There aren't any. They try to decode you, but you've evolved past predictability. Let them guess who you've become. Let them obsess over what they lost. Because now, they're no longer ignoring you. They're orbiting you. And here's the irony. They'll think you're manipulating them, but all you did was refuse to be reduced. They started the game with silence, but you'll end it with absence that echoes. You became the unanswered question that haunts them, the attention they now chase, without understanding why. And here's what seals it. You don't punish. You don't gloat. You don't say, "I told you so." You greet their return not with resentment, but with stillness, with a presence that no longer revolves around them. And what they feel now isn't rejection, it's replacement. They're looking for the old version of you, the one they could ignore. But that version, gone. In its place is someone they now have to earn. And that's when control fully shifts. Not because you demanded it, but because your silence revealed your value. Machiavelli believed power wasn't something you grabbed by force. It was something people offered when they realized they couldn't live without your presence. So how do you make someone offer their attention again? You don't plead. You don't compete. You make them feel the cost of losing access. More importantly, you become something they no longer feel entitled to. That's where most people miss the mark. When someone ignores you, they're making a bet. They assume you'll still be there. You'll still care. You'll wait. Your job is to destroy that assumption. Not with drama, but with ascension. You become more powerful in your absence than you ever were in your presence. That means no more mirroring their energy. You command your own, no more explaining your silence. You let them fill in the blanks with insecurity. No more reacting like their attention defines your worth. Now your absence redefines theirs. You're not cold. You're just unavailable to be taken for granted. And here comes the final stage, the most Machiavellian of them all. You give them a taste, and then take it away again. Just when they think the door is cracking open, you vanish. Not loudly, quietly, subtly, with surgical calm. Yesterday, you were warm. Today, you're still. Yesterday, you were reachable. Now you're gone. This doesn't confuse them. It consumes them. Because now, you're no longer the person they once ignored. You're the one they can't stop thinking about and can no longer access at will. You've become the mystery, the emotional puzzle they're obsessed with solving. And the tragic irony? They'll think you're playing mind games, but all you did was refuse to collapse. They started this game with silence, but you ended it by becoming unforgettable. And now their silence, once their weapon, has become their prison. Because you're no longer wondering, why are they ignoring me? You've outgrown that question. Machiavelli never wasted time on thoughts that weakened his position. He didn't ask, why don't they value me? He asked, how do I make my absence more powerful than my presence ever was? And the answer was always the same. Withdraw, evolve, return colder. Because once they feel what it's like to lose you, they will never feel whole again. Unless they get you back. But by the time they do, you may not care anymore. Now here's a truth most never recognize, but Machiavelli would have understood instinctively. People don't miss you. They miss their access to you. That's what being ignored really reveals. It's not a loss of love. It's a test. They're gauging your need for attention. They're checking whether you've internalized their power. And when that test fails, when you don't flinch, don't beg, don't break, something fractures inside them. Because all power is built on one thing, reaction. If you react, they win. If you don't, their power collapses. And now, your absence becomes a virus in their mind, not just a void, but a question they can't answer. Why didn't they reach out? Did they even notice? Was I never that important? That's how psychological pressure builds. And like all pressure, it only ends one of two ways. They crack, or they come crawling back. Either way, you win. There's a specific emotional sequence that unfolds when your silence is truly executed. Machiavelli wouldn't have used words like attachment style or emotional dysregulation. He would have called it strategic inversion, because in the beginning, they controlled the emotional weather. Your mood depended on their attention. But now, through restraint, through silence, through elegance, you've reversed the polarity, and they can feel it. They're locked out, exiled from your orbit, and it burns. Here's what happens inside them. First, ego friction. They expected you to chase. You didn't. The narrative starts cracking. Then, identity confusion. They thought they mattered more. Now they're questioning that. Next, status panic. Who's replaced me? Are they happier? Have they moved on? The jealousy begins. The comparison starts. The desperation builds. And finally, impulse re-entry. That, hey, just checking in text. That vague emoji reply. That, I saw this and thought of you. But they're not coming back for connection. They're coming back for control. Because your silence created the one thing their ego can't tolerate, irrelevance. This is the emotional loop. And your silence is the trigger for every single stage. But here's what separates a cold presence from a cruel one. You don't punish. You protect. Most people, when they're ignored, take it personally. So when the person comes back, they lash out. That's not power. That's bitterness. And Machiavelli would despise it. Real power doesn't gloat. It simply no longer makes space for people who failed the test. So, when they return, and they will, you don't bring up the silence. You don't explain your absence. You don't need to. Because the version of you that would have, that version is dead. In its place is someone sharper, calmer, more focused. And now, they don't just want your attention. They're afraid of losing it again. And that fear, that's your leverage. Let's crystallize this with one of Machiavelli's most dangerous insights. A prince who is feared is safer than one who is loved. It doesn't mean be cruel. It means be unpredictable. It means people should know, consciously or not, that losing your respect has a cost they cannot afford. That's the emotional frame you now operate from. They can ignore you. They can test you. They can underestimate you. But if you do this right, they'll regret it. Not because you punished them, but because they finally understand.